first I didn't know if this belonged here, but it actually completely does, so on that note, let's proceed. My sister moved to New England at the beginning of March 2019. She and her husband, Lou, purchased a beautiful forever home after they got married. This was all against my parents' wishes, and the relationship eventually blew up in her face. Let's put it this way. It was her first beautiful wedding. It was his third. But geez, I'm really getting into stuff that has nothing to do with the actual story, so let's take it back. Sis moves to New England at the start of March. Mid-May, she calls me in hysterics. She's out of breath, trying not to project her voice while sobbing into the phone. I asked her what was wrong. She tells me that she thinks there's demons in the house, but Lou doesn't believe her. Our family follows the word of Jesus, and hearing my sister screaming about demons sent my attention into red alert. Right before she called me, she told me she was taking a shower. Lou's out of town, so when she saw a silhouette standing on the other side of the matte glass shower door, she screamed. She almost slipped. When she caught herself, she looked back towards the door. The silhouette was gone. But before that, she says that stuff around their house had gone missing, or stuff would end up in a completely different place from where they last put it. My sister is extremely OCD, and so she immediately noticed the oddities around the house, but she kept them to herself for the most part. She certainly never told me, until the silhouette. The terror set in for her a lot more while Lou was gone on business, and the disappearing acts continued. This was the first time the entity presented itself in physical form. It solidified my sister's conspicuous beliefs about everything that had been happening up to that point. A big house echoes a lot louder when you're alone, is one of the depressing quotes my sister would tell me. Apparently, her footsteps weren't the only ones to make noise up and down the hallways. She didn't care to chase the demon, though. She waited until morning, and then drove 4 hours back to mine and my parents' house. We live right next to each other. My dad's the one who taught us about the Holy Spirit, so he took it upon himself to drive back to my sister's place and disperse that evil energy plaguing her home. When they got there, it did not go at all how either of them expected. As they walked inside, my dad held his Bible close to his chest. Then, they heard the toilet upstairs flush, and the sink turned on. Demons don't use the bathroom, right? My dad didn't think so. He ushered my sister to stay where she was, and he starts to quickly and quietly make his way up the stairs towards the upstairs restroom. When the faucet turns on, my dad gets in a caveman-looking fighting stance, ready for the door to open, and confident a demon won't be what exists on the other side of that door. Dad, fireman, kicks the door right when it unlatched, sending some homeless 40-year-old creep backwards into the counter behind him. Before the guy can get up, my dad gives him an old-school ass-whooping, mainly to make sure that he didn't get away before the cops got there. My sister called the cops, and they came to pick the creep up. Another cop comes to look around. They discover that he's been living in the attic since before they moved in. How was this missed by the inspection? Well, obvious answer is that they cut corners. And I guess that's the downside of having these things done while you're out of state. You gotta have a lot of trust in companies, which are just people that you don't know. The police also later alluded to the fact that the man likely suffered from schizophrenia. After the cops would leave, my dad would do some more digging. He found a makeshift tunnel that was hidden, even little passageways that this guy had built for himself in the attic that connected through the walls of the house, all stemming from their attic. They also found most of their missing stuff, aside from jewelry. The guy had also kept a butcher knife up there. Less than 3 months later, we'd all find out that Lou was cheating on my sister with a coworker. My sister ended up moving in with my family for a couple of months before she ended up in a new place of her own. And this time, we all went to the inspection, which I highly recommend if you're in a position of buying a home. You trust your inspector, or better yet, Get a second opinion if you can't view it yourself. Several years ago, my computer and webcam were hacked. I'm not great with technology or malicious malware for that matter, so I don't quite understand how they did it, but I know how it happened. It was late 2005. I'm in a chat room, a music chat with a bunch of locals talking to each other about random music. I was chatting about the White Stripes show that I'd gone to with this guy that I'd met in the chat. After a bit of back and forth, we sent each other an individual message. We were talking for a while, and then he sent me a message with a link. He said it was, quote unquote, one of the best Stripes covers he'd ever heard. So I clicked the link. It didn't work, but I just thought that it was because my computer wasn't compatible with whatever was needed to play the video. We continued our conversation, and a few minutes later, he asked me how much the posters on my wall cost. I froze. I did have posters on my wall at the time, but so do a lot of people. There was no way that he could know that for sure, right? He was just messing with me. What do you mean? I asked. The Radiohead poster. That one's really cool. Where'd you get that from? Came the reply. I was horrified. I for sure had a Radiohead poster on my wall, directly behind me. There was no way that he could have worked out that I was into Radiohead, not based on our conversation in the chat. We hadn't even mentioned more than a couple of bands. I was adamant in convincing myself that this individual was simply fortunate in making accurate guesses. But it also crossed my mind that he could be a close friend in real life who was playing a prank on me. So I typed back, "Don't know what you mean, man. The only poster I've got is a Resident Evil one." I didn't really have one, but I wanted him to accept that he was unsuccessful in trying to scare me. He responded, "Huh, really? Weird. I see the Radiohead poster, and I can see what looks like a Modest Mouse poster, but I don't see Resident Evil." I was stunned. He was totally right. I had both of those posters behind me. This had to be one of my friends. I was pretty sure that it was my friend Jesse. He's the only one that would do this kind of thing, pranks and stuff like that. He knew that I would go into this chat sometimes. Plus, he'd been to my place more than a few times, so he would definitely know what my room looked like. I called Jesse. It went straight to voicemail. I began leaving a voicemail telling him that I knew it was him when I saw that this guy was typing in the chat. I saw 3 words. "I'm not Jesse." This was insane. It was honestly horrifying. He had access to my webcam and my microphone. I was shocked. I basically threw myself on the floor and dove to the outlet where everything was plugged in. I was carelessly ripping out every plug there was, computer, charger, whatever. The computer had turned off. I dashed into my room, threw my duvet cover over the computer after unplugging the microphone. I dashed to the corner of my room and I just huddled there, completely unsure what the fuck to do next. What I came to realize, or I guess became paranoid about, was if he was able to get my webcam, my microphone so easily, did that mean that he could somehow get a GPS on where my computer was, therefore exactly where I lived in the city? It was all overwhelming. And maybe it was me overreacting, but at the time, I was terrified. I then got up, dashed to every window, locked it, double-locked the front door, even went as far as putting heavy things in front of the front door. Eventually, I phoned one of my friends and asked if I could stay at their house. They agreed. As I hung up, I felt a little better, but I knew I needed to call my uncle, who was really good with computers. He would know what to do. He arranged for my computer to be debugged the next day. He assured me that the guy couldn't find out exactly where I lived, that I wasn't in any danger. I didn't press him on how he knew this or why I should believe it. I just accepted it, because anything else was honestly too terrifying to think about. But, he was right. I ended up being perfectly fine. My computer was repaired. I stayed at my friend's house for a couple of days before reluctantly going home, looking over my shoulder constantly, of course. The shop had put this privacy thing over my webcam, but I was honestly still so paranoid that it itself was some sort of device. I removed it. I just went with good old-fashioned tape. It was a good lesson on online safety. It's stuff that's just known now, obviously, but for anyone who doesn't know, don't click strange links or links from people you don't know. You never know what their intentions are.